Hi. Many of us would have traveled across the globe, traveled to different parts of the country or the globe in different airlines. So, and I'm sure on a number of occasions you would have been seated next to the emergency exit. So, whenever you sat next to the emergency exit, I'm sure the air hostess would have come and then explained to you how to operate the emergency exit at the time of an emergency. Now, the question is, how many of us can really operate the emergency exit at the time of the need? I think very few of us can really do that. So this gives us a very interesting insight about learning, about the neuroscience of learning. So when the air hostess is explaining how to operate an emergency exit, the many of us are actually switched off. We are not really listening to her. We are maybe on our phone, sending a WhatsApp message or talking to somebody or thinking about something. We are switched off. Now, learning is about how do you really switch on the brain? How do you really ignite the brain? Because the human mind is not an empty vessel to fill with water. It's a candle which has to be lighted. It's a candle which can glow. So now this brings us to the interesting concept of neuroscience of learning. How do you really ignite the brain? How do you really make your learners want to learn? So this concept will actually help us understand how can we make our content relevant, meaningful, exciting, so that people would want to learn. For us to understand that, we'll also have to understand the learning process, the cognitive learning process or the learning cycle. The subject of neuroscience has been an enigma. It's a mystery for many. And typically an L&D practitioner would ask, what neuroscience has to do with learning? Well, I would say I think learning and development is all about understanding the intricacies of neuroscience and then trying to figure out how do we apply the insights from neuroscience into the way we design, develop, and deliver training to employees in organizations, to learners in different organizations, and so on. What's extremely important for the L&D practitioners to know is learning is all about change. It's about change in behavior. It's about change in mindset. It's about change in attitude. It's about bringing about new concepts, new insights which people can apply. So every time there is new learning, it essentially means there is a change inside the brain. There is a change in the physical structure, there is a reorganization inside the brain. I'm not going to get into the complexities of this topic, but just to kind of briefly talk about some of the basic fundamental aspects. All of us know that our brain has billions of cells, which we call neurons. And every time we read something, we do something, we listen to something, we see something, we practice something, neurons would add more dendrites. And every time you do something new, you form a new dendrite. And the dendrites are formed, new dendrites are formed on top of old ones. And as we practice more, as we listen more, as we do something more and more and more, they just become thicker and stronger. And that leads to greater retention. And in a way, new concepts become part of us. So now, I'm not going to talk more about that because it's not about getting into the theories and the concepts about neuroscience, but it's about the application. So now, what really is interesting for us to know is when people learn, they learn only when they want to learn. The learning process typically starts with gathering information. So we have this sensory cortices in our brain, which kind of gather information through different senses. We hear, we listen, we watch, there is touch and feel, we smell things, and then we kind of gather information through the sense organs, and this sensory cortices kind of receive that information. And then the next step is reflection. So once you gather lots of information from different sources, we reflect on them. And reflection is about forming new insights. It's about, kind of forming new ideas inside your brain. So that happens in the temporal lobe in the brain. After reflection, the next step is creation. So once we reflect, once we have new insights, then we kind of formulate ideas and concepts and plans, etc. We form our own methodologies, our frameworks, and so on. So after creation, the next step is actually testing. So once the plan is created in the mind, it's all about going out there and then kind of applying it, trying it out. Once a framework is kind of designed, it's about going out and then testing it, which is active testing. So these are the motor cortices in the brain that really help us take things to the real world, try it out, practice it, do an active testing. So these are the 4 steps in the cognitive learning process. We gather information, we reflect, then we create, and then we test. So now the question is, as L&D practitioners, do we really facilitate this process through our learning programs? So do we really help our learners gather information through different sources? Not just by hearing, but through feeling, and then through touch, and then through a visual display, and so on. Then once we gather information, do we really help our people reflect? Let me share this example. So Nadal, the famous tennis player, every time he goes out to play, in between the serves, he keeps bouncing the ball for a long time. And then sometimes he does it for so long that he has been fined by the referee on a number of occasions, because it takes a long time to serve, because he keeps bouncing the ball. And once he was interviewed, and then he was asked, then, why does it really take so much of time in between serves? Nadal's response was, actually at that time, I reflect. I take the time to reflect. So what went well in the last shot? What did not go well? What can I do differently when I'm playing next time, when I'm playing the next shot? What I'm going to do differently? And that reflection really helps me. And I think I've won many matches because of that reflection. So now the question is, as L&D practitioners, do we give opportunity to our learners to reflect? Where is the time? Because we want to just fill their brain with content, with information. But where is the time to reflect? Reflection is a very important aspect of learning. And after reflection is about helping the learners create. They have enough insights. Now they have to use these insights to create meaning, to create plan, to create action plan, to create concepts, to formulate their own concepts. And then once they do that, as L&D practitioners, as L&D leaders, as trainers, our responsibility is to help them try it out, practice it, go to the real world, and then do this. So we talked about the cognitive learning process, or the learning cycle. Now what does it mean for L&D practitioners like us? Well, actually, this has given us lots of interesting insights. So we can use these insights to apply in our content design, in our learning design. As L&D practitioners, we'll have to really figure out how we are going to engage our learners in the entire learning cycle, in the process of gathering information, reflecting, creating new ideas and concepts, and testing it. So we have to create ample opportunities for learners to gather, to reflect, to create, and to try. We'll also have to help them connect to what they already know. We'll also have to use all possible senses in the learning process, and to a great extent, the visual senses, because that really makes a big impact in the entire learning process. We'll have to create opportunities for learners to feel, to think, to reflect, and to have emotions, and all of that. We will have to create the right conditions for our people to learn. Because learning is not just about a set of activities, it's also being in the right conditions, in the right environment where the learning can be maximized. So Albert Einstein said, "I do not teach anything to my students. All I do is I create the right conditions for people where they can learn effectively."